Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Mon. He is Eric. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. It is Q&A episode tonight. One of my favorite nights on the Bengals Pulse. I absolutely love this. Guys, jump on now. Make sure you are commenting in the comment section. Give us your questions. Mon and I will try to get as many of them as we can in the short time that we have with you guys tonight. Want to thank you guys for joining us. Hooday, we love you. Mon, before we kick this thing off, you got your Edmonton Oilers conference shirt on. How you been doing, bud?
Good. I bought this just recently. It's $10 because it's last year's shirt. So got to save some money there. I'm doing good. I'm really excited. I want to make an announcement really quick. I'm happy, really excited to say the Bengals Pulse family is going to be growing. We're going to be grandparents. My son, Luke, and Amanda are going to be having a baby in August. We are really excited.
Oh, that's so cool.
Hey, indeed. Might need it could be a cheerleader outfit. I got some hand-me-down ones of that if you need. So
it could be, but we're really excited and we're happy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we're excited. And Bengal Pulse fans, wish them good luck. Luke and Amanda, we're just happy and excited and can't wait.
Hey, I like that. KP, I love that.
The grandma.
Listen, the kid has got to call you the grandma. That is so awesome, KP.
I was over here trying to come up with a nickname, and KP nailed it. Good job, KP.
That's the best.
All right, that's it.
It's got to be
done deal. I'll talk to them right now. Hopefully, they're watching. Yep. Done deal. All right.
Well, let me just say congratulations to Luke. I'm so excited for him. He's going to be a great dad. He is going to be such a great dad, and you and Heather are going to be such great grandparents. I am so excited for this. Congratulations, dude. I can't believe you waited to the Bengals Pulse to tell me this, but I am so excited for you.
I'm excited. And, I'm going to be a granddad, and I'm only 40. It's just unbelievable.
Hey!
You're actually right. You're actually right in the wheelhouse for that grandparent age, I think.
Hey, you get to be a young grandpa, and that's great. You're not one of those old grandpas. You can still go toss the ball around with the youngins. So
I'm not gonna lie to you, our fans don't know this, so you guys might have realized it, but I'm becoming a salty old mon because I'm getting really cranky about things, man. Especially Duke Tobin.
Listen, I could tell you, Jake was standing outside watching the games through the window on his lawn, and he was yelling for him to get off his lawn.
Listen, Mon has been that way for at least the last 2 years. That's something.
Listen, the Bengals will do that to you.
Oh yes, that's a big part of it, and the Reds. Yeah. Mon and I have to suffer year round with those two teams.
Hey Ken, It's a must. The child has to be a Bengal fan, or there's no college tuition. There's none of that stuff. Okay, it's a done deal. Okay.
Well, and he or she is gonna see a Super Bowl when they're like not even 1 year old. So
wouldn't that be something?
It gotta be.
It will be.
Gotta be. I'm just excited. I'm excited that Angela and I get to buy Bengals baby stuff. That's the best. That is the best.
And it's not your baby. It's great when it's not your baby.
Yeah, when it's I'm saying when it's not your baby, when it's somebody else's baby.
Divine's calling me Grumpy Mon. Thanks, Divine. All right, hey.
Change the Twitter handle to Grumpy Mon.
Well, that's a great way to start the show off, man. Congratulations, Mom. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, guys.
Of course. And Luke, I'll congratulate them all later, but I'm excited.
They don't matter as much. They're just the parents.
They're just the parents. And listen, Luke, you have got to pick up the pieces of the fumble, the Jeremy Hill fumble that Mon and Heather had naming Jake. They could have named him Han Solo. and they fumbled the ball. I love Jake. It's the best name. But Solo, awesome. Heather.
Actually, Jake Owens was going to change his name to Han Solo, but his wife
You're telling
overruled
Luke
him.
and Amanda to name their child Han Solo. Okay,
That's
I got
exactly
you.
what I'm doing.
Hey, that's another episode. Okay, that's another episode.
Chewie or Han, either one of those I'm good with.
Yeah, let's thankfully this Uncle Jake isn't in the baby naming business. So
all right, let's get on with the show. Again,
we won't call him
guys,
Duke, I can tell you that.
Good transition. Hey, let's get into the show. We have Q&A queued up, but some stuff broke today that we really got to talk about.
Yes.
Basically a Q&A. So we've been critical of Kelsey Conway and some of her reporting in the past, but shout out to Kelsey Conway. She got to sit down with Duke and she asked him some tough questions. And so we thought we would get you guys' opinions on some of those questions. Some of the ones that jumped out at us were they asked him straight up about Jermaine Burton. What has he done to earn the spot on this team? And according to her article, he said he's done absolutely nothing and expounded on that and talked about taking a chance on him and how they're there to support him. It doesn't sound like they're going to cut him, but let's start off with the Jermaine Burton one. What do you guys think about that question and where he went with it? Jake, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this on the show when we graded out the offense. I think we talked about Jermaine Burton and how much of a disappointment he has been. I think this speaks volumes. When you're de facto GM, I don't know what his title is, but when he comes out and says publicly that Jermaine Burton has done absolutely nothing to earn a spot on this team, those are harsh words. But that's the reality of the situation. And again, I've given Duke a lot of crap these last couple months, which are some of it well deserving, I think. But I did like I liked his honesty in this interview, and I think part of this answer to Jermaine Burton was, he basically said, like, you've got to be a professional. This is a different level of football. And, I think you could see Joe Burrow, you could see the disgust in his face when this last incident that happened with Jermaine Burton. So it's going to be interesting. Again, we talked about this, Mon, on the offensive grading show. We talked about this is a guy that he's going to struggle making this football team. He really is. I mean, Joe Burrow he's not here to play. He's not here for all that immature nonsense stuff. He's here to win. So, I liked it. I liked the honesty from Duke Tobin, Mom.
Yeah, he was very direct when it came to that question. And how can you disagree with him? He's been disappointing. We expected a little bit more from him. He did acknowledge that they drafted him knowing he was a risk. Saying that he's got to grow up. Some of the things we've read are concerning, but he's a third-round pick. Hopefully that light bulb comes on. I heard he's going to stay in Cincinnati and train. The guy has a lot of talent. You just can't wash your hands of him. You got to give him another opportunity. It's going to be a short leash. And the early results are not good. Let's put it that way. But he's somebody he's worth keeping on for right now, and to see how he handles this offseason and training camp. If these problems occur, they'll cut him loose. But he's a young man, and I'm not making excuses for him. Sometimes people develop at different rates and at different time. And we just need to be a little patient with them. And hopefully that patience works out.
Yeah, I mean, we all made mistakes when we were kids. Thankfully, for most of us, the internet wasn't a thing. I mean, it was a thing when I was that age, but you didn't make your mistakes out in the public and all that stuff. Some of the stuff that's come out is very concerning. If that does come to fruition or prove out to be true, then it's probably time to move on. But I think the stat is the male brain isn't fully formed, or the frontal lobe isn't fully formed until they're 25. So try to give him a little bit to find out who he's going to be, and hopefully that locker room can mold him if he sticks around. Mon, what else
Listen
jumps out at you?
Eric,
Dr. Eric. Wow.
Eric,
Listen, I got a lot of stuff, guys.
Look at you, Eric, the science guy. I love it, Eric Nye.
Listen,
By the way, Alex just put on here that Burrow just put some pressure on the Bengals. He must have been interviewed at the Pro Bowl. We're obviously on live. I wasn't watching, but interested to hear what he said, Alex. Let us know what he said. I'm interested.
Yeah, if you could summarize, we do apologize for taking people away from the Pro Bowl. We did get to witness once again no teammate showing up for Joe Burrow and his trivia person not answering two questions.
I mean, what a clown.
And then the rest of them, the quarterbacks were feeding him answers, and Joe was locked in. So screw that. Let's move on. Mon, what else jumped out from the Duke Tobin interviews with you? Why don't you give us a couple hot takes, things that jumped out to the grandma there?
I read the Hobson interview. He interviewed him also. I'm really hard on Duke Tobin. I've criticized him a lot, and I think it's warranted. I don't take any of it back, but I got to give him some credit. He took some of the blame for the defensive issues. He seemed apologetic towards Lou Anarumo, because he didn't exactly set them up to succeed. He didn't use those words, but he was very apologetic. He acknowledged that some of the decisions they made hasn't worked out, and hopefully they've learned from it. He's not a coach, but it was a lot of coach speak. He's not really going to, say things out there that are wow, but there's some things that he acknowledged. They're going to look at players on the offensive line. I didn't like what he said in the Hobson interview. We have a great offense, and our offensive line isn't as depleted as people think. You know what, Duke? Our tackles are fine, but we have the two worst guards in the NFL in 2024. We cannot trot those guys back out. He did say they're going to look at players at that position. If I'm asking Duke Tobin right now, if you watch the Bengals Pulse, just don't go out and sign a guy. I need you to sign a football player. I need you to sign a very good football player at that position. Just don't bring in somebody that's just above a camp body. We don't need that. We've seen that enough the last few years. We need quality players. I've watched these playoff games. I've seen some of the positions that are our weaknesses. I would love to have some of those players on the Bengals. It's just the talent level at some of those spots, it's so big when you see some of these other teams play. But hope this offseason is huge. The next 6 weeks are going to be critical. This free agency period is going to be huge, and that's going to help set up our draft also. So we'll see how it shakes out. We'll see.
Yeah. The frustrating thing is the higher paid guard was the worst in the league. You can't, you could expect some of that from Cordell Volson, a 4th-round pick out of North Dakota State, but he was better than Alex Kappa. They were both not very good, but Alex Kappa is the guy getting paid, and he was garbage. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say one other thing. I know we've talked about this on numerous episodes. Somebody just mentioned Zeitler in our chat here. Kevin Zeitler's been gone 8+ years. You could honestly say we still haven't really found his replacement. At the level Kevin Zeitler's playing at, what he's playing at now, he's playing better than any of our interior offensive linemen. He was on our roster at one time. Guys, we negotiated for 2 years with Kevin Zeitler. 2 years. Year one was the year to sign him. Give him more than what Clinton Bowling was making. Offer him $8-9 million a year. He would have signed a 5-year contract extension. They waited another year. His price went up. And that's when the Bengals are like, hey, man, we're out. Man, they always just want to lowball or they insult some of these guys on the initial contract offer, and it just sets a bad tone the remaining years that they're here. They've got to change their ways. They got to be better. And
we had an opportunity to negotiate with him again, and it didn't really get started, and he went off and still succeeding. Jake, before we get to the questions, did you have any other thoughts on that? I know you, Jake, hold on. Breaking news. Jake learned how to copy and paste with this article. So he's copying and pasting into our chat.
Copy and paste.
Well, I don't know where that's been the last 2 years because that was impressive. Go ahead, give us your thoughts.
Eric, neither science guy's got jokes tonight, Mon. All right.
I got more medical facts too if you need to.
Oh, by the way, Alex, thank you. Yes, that's an interesting quote for sure. Joe Burrow stand up for his players.
Well,
Go ahead.
You want me to read that real quick?
Yeah.
Alex giving the Joe Burrow quote. I don't know what more he could show and do to prove himself. We have several guys like that who have stepped up for us and deserve to be paid what they're worth. Joe Burrow's putting them on him. Thank you, Alex.
So yeah, three quick things I take away from that interview. And again, I'm just going off of the Kelsey Conway one, but number one, I thought it was very interesting, his comments about the safety play. And the lack of tackling. Again, a lot of honesty that we as fans have been yelling about all year. He talked a little bit about almost made it directed towards Geno Stone about how poor the tackling was on the back end. Again, I don't want to bring up Jesse Bates, but they still haven't replaced Jesse Bates. So I thought that was interesting that the talk about the safeties and how poorly the tackling was this year. Number two, I think it was very interesting that he made a point about the interior of the offensive line, how they have to fix it. He almost was making some harsh comments about Frank Pollock, which I thought was really interesting. He did it in kind of a political way, but he definitely threw some stuff out there that was not very well spoken about Frank Pollock, and talked about how they're gonna have to add guys in the interior of the offensive line, and how that room is going to look different than it did this year, which again I think is very interesting. We talk about it, but for the Bengals to actually do it is going to be another thing. So I thought that was interesting, and I think that the talk about Jamar and T and Trey, and I didn't hear a lot of negative talk. When he first came out and talked about we can't pay all the guys at that was first thrown out there, that quote, we can't pay what did he say? We can't have the highest paid players at every position or something. But that was taken out of context, as we found out when we went back and saw the Kelsey Conway interview. It was speaking of the defensive side of the ball. But he followed it up with, he thinks that they can get something done with Trey, Jamar, and he even was positive about T. I thought there was a lot of positivity about the Bengals being able to sign those three guys. A lot more positive than you would expect, especially the comments directed towards T. Higgins. So again, Kelsey Conway, I thought that was one of her best pieces that I have read. A very honest interview, and we've been asking as fans, Duke, where are you, dude? Where are you? You should be the voice of this. And this is what we got. It was some good, honest answer. Mon, did you have to say?
Yeah. I sort of broke up there. I'm having some internet issues here. I did hear what you said. No, I just got on Twitter real quick, and I tell you what, the comment from Joe is blowing up right now, and that is some major pressure on there. But to get back on the T. Higgins situation and signing all this, I did see, and I heard from reputable sources, people that I trust on podcasts and everything, that the Bengals offered him somewhere like 18-19 million a year. So if you want to sign T. Higgins, you're looking at least 25 to 27, 28 $1 million a year now. So what if the Bengals would have just offered him 23? I think T would have signed. He would have signed a long-term deal. So you see what's happening here? It's like history's repeating itself. they're going to end up, if they do sign them both, which they should, they're going to be spending a lot more than they would have if they had signed them a year earlier. Jamar Chase is going to be more expensive after what he did this year. They should have signed him in August.
Yeah, agreed.
I think the problem, though, I mean, there obviously was a Mulligetta problem there because team moved on from him. I think Mulligetta won't, when you've got a star, he gets that guaranteed money, and that's great for the players. But it also it can hinder if the guy wants to stay there and Mulligetta insists on the guarantees. So I don't know that T might have been okay with the money and Mulligetta wasn't okay with the guarantees, and maybe that's why he moved on from him. Like we've said before, you don't move on unless you're planning to negotiate with the Bengals when your agent doesn't really negotiate with them. So we'll see. Let's get to some of these questions that we've got coming in. We're going to go to our first one that we've got submitted over on X. Let me share the screen here and doing a little bit more digging on where this one came from. I'm pretty impressed with the reach of the Bengals Pulse. At Dr. Simon MC, Simon McCormick. So maybe he can confirm if my doctor skills are on point or not. But could Al Golden show us that the scouting and defensive picks for the last few years haven't actually been that bad? It's been the coaching of the rookies. And big note, Bengals Pulse fan from England here. So shout out to our wide-reaching scope. Jake, why don't you take this first? Is it Duke Tobin's horrible picks, or is it the coaching, or in between?
I mean, I hate to say this, but I think it is a little bit of both. I think there's been a huge issue with the development of players, especially at certain specific positions. That would be the defensive line and the offensive line in particular. Obviously, the two weakest developmental areas on this team. We're talking about defense, though, and can Al Golden turn this thing around? I think that's why they brought him in. We talked about this, Eric, on Tuesday's show, that the hiring of Al Golden and this staff that they're putting together, Montgomery and all those guys that they're bringing in, are all guys that are younger in age, that maybe have a better opportunity to relate to the players. And again, I'm hoping what Al said was not just coach speak, but Al said that the biggest thing is developing the young guys and letting those guys play. And and I think we're going to find out right away, because the Bengals have used a lot of draft capital on the defensive side of the ball, and nothing has come to fruition with any of it. I mean, again, we talked about this. 9 out of the last 10 top picks in the 100 have been on the defensive side of the ball, and these guys are just not being developed. Even Duke Tobin talked a little bit about it in his interview about Myles Murphy, and he liked how the two tackles played at the end of the year. But Myles Murphy has got to step up. He's got to finish rushes, which I think we've said on this podcast 100 million times, that pressures are great, but those guys don't get paid to pressure. They get paid to get sacks. And Myles Murphy's got to start doing a better job of finishing off those rushes. And he pointed out that that was one of the reasons why Al Golden was hired, was to help develop guys like Myles Murphy. So I do think it's a little bit of both. I think it's some bad drafting, but I also think there is a big issue with the developmental part of this with the rookies and the younger guys, Mon.
Yeah, I think for the Bengals' sake, they need Al Golden and this new staff to come in and develop these stars. I think they have a lot of talent. I don't think they've been set up to succeed. I think Lou Anarumo really was depending. He felt some of the pressure from the previous year. He kept playing players that are injured or seen their best days. And I think they should have. I think Myles Murphy should have had 200 more snaps this year. I think some of these other younger players, they have to play to get better. We got to see where they're at. And Al Golden and his staff, I mean, it's essential. If they can't get more out of these players, it's going to be a long year for us. I will say this, the bar is low for the Bengal defense. There's going to be some significant improvements next year. Is it going to be enough, though? Is it going to be enough? I think the rebuild of this defense is going to be a 2-year process, I want to just add something else. Michael Lombardi used to be a general manager in the NFL Patriots. He's a confidant of Bill Belichick. When Bill Belichick took the North Carolina job, his first hire was Michael Lombardi. He was on one of the ESPN shows, McAfee's show, and he was talking about Trey Hendrickson, how the Bengals have to sign him because he's a presence for the Bengals. And he says the defensive coordinator job in Cincinnati is one of the toughest because it's the way the Bengals offense plays, and the Bengals they don't have a run game. And without that run game, it puts more pressure on your defense. Your defense is on the field a lot because the Bengals score so quickly. And, what he said was really interesting and, sort of an eye opener. They got to improve the talent base, and they have got to get more out of those young players. It's a must.
Hey, let me say this real quick too. For two younger coaches that are just coming into this thing, a lot of pressure on Peters and Montgomery, right? I mean, a lot of pressure right off the get-go because you're hearing all of it. You're hearing it from the GM. You're hearing it from all these guys, Zach Taylor, about the offensive and defensive line and the developmental issues. Peters and Montgomery being thrown right into the fire and having to come in and fix these two serious deficiencies on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, one could argue that, but you could also argue that the bar was so low that any bit of an improvement is going to help, and they're going to get more talented players. So, we don't. I've said this many times. We don't have to be a top 10 defense. We cracked the top 20, and that's Super Bowl bound. So, I could argue that they just have to be a little bit better than the other guys, but we'll see. Let's get to some of the questions that are rolling in the chat here. Let's go with Ken Dipples.
Thank you, Simon. Good question.
Yeah, Ken Dipples' first question here, and Ken's got a lot of them in there. So we saw this proven out with Eric All. A couple back season ending injuries going into this year, and then gets injured again. They have a history. The Bengals have a history of drafting injured players. Do you think this is a good draft strategy? And I'll just add, do you think that they go away from that now based on the current results? Jake, why don't you give us your thoughts first?
Well, I mean, Anthony Munoz falls into this category, right? He's a guy that was had some injury issues, and you could argue he's probably the best right tackle to ever play the game. I mean, you could argue that for sure. But there's definitely a lot of gamble to it, and I think Duke spoke about that even with players that have histories of being knuckleheads like Jermaine Burton. There's gamble when you draft. My favorite pick of this past draft, Amarius Mims, he had a lot of injury issues, and he looks like he's going to work out. But I do think that there is, and again, these guys, they break these players down so much, and hopefully they're doing. I don't know if our 6 scouts are doing all the research that they can possibly do, like some of these other teams that have 20, but our 6 scouts come in and they have to find all of these issues and look back on it and talk to doctors and do all these things. The Eric All situation is a rough one for sure. But in Eric All's case, he was a guy that wasn't really considered a high draft pick. So I think if you're going to take a risk, there is a good draft strategy in taking those guys in those later rounds because, if they do work themselves out. I mean, Eric All, before he got hurt, Eric looked like the real deal. and we were all raving about him. We were excited about him. It's unfortunate. But some guys also just have bad luck. I mean, we could go back and look at, there's a ton of Bengals players that Mon and I have watched, in all of our years, 40 plus years. There's a ton of players you can look back on and just say, oh man, what if this guy only didn't have these issues? Tyler Eifert is a great example of that. He just had really bad luck. And some guys, it's a shame, but they have that,
Mon? Oh, you're muted still.
Sorry. I don't have a problem with drafting Eric All where we did. He had that knee injury. It's one of those lottery ticket things. Nobody expected him to tear up the same knee again, and it's going to cost him another season. It's sad. But, sometimes it's the price of doing business. Cedric Ogbuehi was our first-round pick. He shredded his knee in December and was drafted 4 months later by the Bengals. It didn't work out. We can go back all the way to Anthony Munoz. Anthony Munoz had 3 significant knee injuries at USC. He played 4 games his senior year, and the Bengals made him a first-round pick, and he's a Hall of Famer, considered the best left tackle in football. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. You see like the Ravens and some of these teams, they draft players in the 5th, 6th round that could have been 2nd, 3rd rounders. Guys had significant injuries and it works out for them. I would rather from our 1st or 2nd round picks, if we draft them, we need them to produce immediately. I don't want to, redshirt them year 1 because, 1st round picks, teams are expecting them to come in and produce. And, the way the AFC is, the way football is in general, that one special player is all you need to get you over the hump, to get you past Kansas City, get you past some of these teams. So if there's a first rounder there that has a significant injury that might not help us in 2025, I might shy away from that this year. But, we'll see. I mean, I see both sides. I really do. If a guy is ultra talented and that his injury is, manageable, you might have just to roll the dice and take him. So it's a case-by-case thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. I mean, we've argued that this season we have to take the best player available when they're there. Sometimes the best player available, he might have been the 25th best prospect, but he had an injury and it dropped him down to the 3rd round. You still got to take him. Okay. It's the way the way it goes. But I don't want them reaching for somebody that's injured. Maybe he's the 30th best prospect and we draft him 17th. That would absolutely not be a good way to go. Kind of touching on some of the stuff we talked a little bit earlier, but the next greatest cool aunt had a question for the Bengals Pulse here from Olivia. Do you think we need better players, pure talent, or better staff capable of developing those players? Pure talent is few and far between. Let's go, Grandma. Why don't you take this first?
Grandma, I love it.
That's a great question. Great question. I think talent right now is important. We notice draft season, everybody's talking about relative athletic scores. Sometimes these guys are so athletic, their football instincts aren't quite there, but their athleticism just takes over and they flash on the field. The Bengals normally, when you look at some of these athletic scores from previous drafts, the guys we draft aren't some ultra athletic players, especially in rounds 4, 5, and 6. I say we just start drafting those athletes and developing them. That's what I want to do. We saw that with Cedric Johnson this year. He really flashed in the limited opportunities. Chris Jenkins was a higher rated player. His athletic scores through the roofs. The Ole Miss safety, what's his name again? The guy that had the penalty in Kansas City. Dejon Anthony. I'm so sorry. His athletic scores through the roof also. So that's why I'm high on him. I think with that athleticism and a little more seasoning, he could be a special player. So I'm all for drafting talent and let the coaches coach him up. I think that's important because if you draft a guy that's limited athletically, what's his ceiling going to be at?
Well, to answer Mon's favorite child's question, just kidding, Jake and Luke, I love you guys.
His favorite daughter. It's his favorite daughter. For sure. I mean, there's a way to do this, Jake. Come on.
I do like what Mon said, and I think we talk about this a lot off air all the time and during draft especially. The Bengals draft strategy sometimes is very frustrating, right, guys? Because we don't ever really draft best player available. And it's very frustrating. A lot of these teams, you can see the strategy. You can see the strategy of going out and not reaching for somebody because you might need a positional talent, but going out and getting the best player available. So I think it's a big part developing players. I'm very big into that being a coach. I think I personally feel that if you are an athlete and you are not scared, I can turn you into a football player. And most of these guys are probably that way. I mean, these guys are the best players in the world if they're getting drafted. So I think a big part of that is developing the players. But I also think the Bengals have got to start doing a better job of drafting best player available and not reaching. Cedric Abwehi, you brought him up, Mon. It's a nightmare that you would do that. And you even look at the second round pick in Jake Fisher. I mean, you look at the second round pick, right? They're trying to replace Andrew Whitworth in that draft, so they're just grabbing tackles and passing up on much better, talented players, and that is what frustrates me about this draft.
Yeah. Let me follow up on that. That's a great point, and people listening right now, I want your input on this. We drafted Myles Murphy a couple years ago. I'm happy with the pick. I know he hasn't really flashed yet. But in the second round, we had already picked a defensive lineman. There was a player available in the second round that, to me, had a first-round grade, and we didn't pick him. He ended up going to the Steelers, Keanu Benton. Instead, we picked DJ Turner, who I'm not unhappy with. I think DJ Turner could be a great pro. It was a bigger need in the cornerback for the Bengals. But I think Keanu Benton – I don't see the Bengals draft board, but I think Keanu Benton was a higher rated prospect than DJ Turner. But the Bengals had a bigger need at cornerback because they already drafted a defensive lineman. I personally would have loved to have Benton. I mean, think about that. He would solve a defensive tackle issue right now. So that's the point. I think sometimes when it's that close, you just go with the higher rated prospect. I think it's safer. I think it's safer.
Listen, the Bengals do a great job of hitting the home runs that they should hit, right? Joe Burrow, that was a slam dunk layup of a pick. Jamar Chase, I know he didn't play his senior year in college, but to me, that was a slam dunk layup of a pick. Those are easy picks to make. Where the Bengals struggle, Mon, and you know this, is the third, the fourth, the fifth, those mid-round picks that's what you build your team off of. Again, I am not going to sit here and talk about the Rams and how much I respect that front office. But if you want to talk about a team that has built their team very quickly out of nothing, they did it in the third, fourth, and fifth round because they didn't have a first-round pick for the last 4 years.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what you got to hit.
And I mentioned this on a previous show. Look at what the Steelers did. The Steelers drafted Fautanu in the first round. They drafted Frazier in the second round. 2 very highly rated offensive linemen. In the fifth round, they had already picked 2 guys in the offensive line. The highest rated player in the fifth round was a guard. They said, hey, man, we got to take this guy. They could have went position of need. Hey, we're a little short at safety. They drafted the highest rated player on their board, Mason McCormick, ended up starting 12 games for him this year.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's just safer to go with the BPA. It really is. Stockpile talent, they could be a trade chip down the road. I don't know, man. We'll see.
Yeah. Don't overthink it. Take the best guys. Follow up. Go ahead.
Let me just say this real quick. Jennifer's listing some third and fourth round. Gino, we got in the fourth. Logan, we got in the third. Yes.
Good.
Yes, Jennifer. Those were good. But I'm talking about the majority of the time, the Bengals are not hitting on those mid-level picks. They're just not. They're not.
Yeah.
They have like a 10%.
Tyler Shelvin. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could sit here and name. There's a lot more. It's easier to name the good ones to name the bad ones because there's a lot more bad ones than good ones.
Okay. Rookie, I don't want to be like the Steelers either, but I'm just acknowledging a successful draft for him. Go ahead, Eric.
And they needed all those offensive linemen, and that's where you wish the Bengals would have taken a similar route. Follow up from Olivia. Do you think that, and I'll kind of her question, do you think that Golden can toughen them up better than Lou? And that's kind of, I'll expound on that. If Golden has his same roster, can he make them better players than Lou did?
I want to say something right now. My daughter knows me. She has seen me have meltdowns on NFL Sunday when this team gets pummeled and pushed around. Alex Kappa gets somersaulted, pile drived into the turf. This team needs to be physical. I mentioned what Michael Lombardi said on the McAfee show. I didn't add. He mentioned their finesse and they lack physicality. That's what he said. It's the truth. They have got to get tougher in this AFC North. Listen, we can run by them. We could throw the ball over them. I love it. But when it comes to smashing them in the mouth, we can't do it.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to do both. You got to be able to do both. Fancy toys are nice, and the Bengals have those fancy toys. We need the big, ugly guys who are going to go in and bust somebody in the mouth.
Yeah. Sometimes you need the big trucks to come in and build the bridge before the Corvette can drive over it.
Yeah.
Ooh, grasshopper.
Yeah, I got them all.
Eric Nye, the science guy, not only a science guy, but a master of kung fu. So I guess this is what we're getting to.
Jake, let me ask you a question. I know it's a different level, high school, but if your team doesn't show toughness and they're getting manhandled, let's say they have a bad game, what do you do as a coach? Do you run suicide sprints? What do you make them do? I mean, do you put the pads on and make them hit?
Yeah. We strap it up. We strap it up for sure. But the physicality thing for us is, that's all coached. That's all coached in the beginning. We don't. We make sure we don't put ourselves in that situation where we're never going to be more out physical than anybody. So we take care of all that in the beginning, so we don't have to worry about it in the middle of games. I mean, you've watched my teams play now, Mon, for a very long time, decades. I think you could honestly say that my team will never be more out physical on the field, and that's all stuff that we coach in them, and we instill that from the very beginning.
I want to say I watched you play Astronaut High this year, and guys, Astronaut High School is Chris Collinsworth's high school, okay? And those boys are pretty big, and they were bigger than your guys.
Yes.
It was a great game. You guys lost in overtime by like 1 point,
yes. But
you weren't intimidated by them. I remember you guys were laying the wood. I'm like, man, this could get ugly in the second half. It got ugly for Astronaut, because I mean, you guys really matched up physical wise, even though your guys weren't as big. It is an attitude. I don't care what level it is, man. It's in here. It's an attitude, and I'm hoping Golden. I'm hoping that offensive line coach. I'm hoping this defensive line coach. They come in and say, "Listen, guys, you're too nice. Let's take care of it."
How crazy is that? The Bengals getting called out by media on their physicality. That's a bad look, right? I mean, this is not even coming from a coach. This is just coming from a media.
I wish we could play that clip, Eric. I wish we could play the clip, but I don't think we can. Guys,
we can't.
Michael Lombardi, Pat McAfee show. It's about a 3-minute clip. Listen to it.
Yeah. We'll after the show, we'll repost it from the Bengals Pulse X account, and then you guys go listen to it because it's good that the national media starting to see that. So a good segue here. Jennifer has a good question. What are they doing? RE training in the offseason and OTAs, etc., to avoid so many early season injuries while improving the start of the season? And I'll just comment. It took me 10 minutes to understand translate this as a train in that emoji and figure out what the question actually was. So good on you, Jennifer. But I figured it out. I found Waldo and I got it. So Mon, why don't you go first? Any theories on how to fix this?
I do have a lot of theories on it, and do not do what you did the last 3 years. You have to change it up. You have to change it up.
Fun.
Hey, yes. Hey, I want to be like Dr. Phil here. Well, what you need to do, I honestly, you've heard some of the beat reporters over the summer. You know, they joke around country club training camp. You know, we joke around about that. You have to hit, and I'm not talking a little rubber mannequin or a sled. You have to play more in pads, and you have to have more situational football. These guys, they're not ready when the season starts. I love the fact, you remember how these NFLPA comes out with the report, like the coaching staff that takes care of their players. Zach Taylor's in the top 10. He does take care of his players, and they appreciate it. I appreciate that too. He wants them healthy during the season. It's a fine line, but guys, you got to ramp up the physicality. You gotta maybe play your players a little bit more in preseason. I know you risk injury, but guys, they have to do it. They have to change it up. I mean, we cannot have what's happened the last 3 years. It cost us home field advantage. The last time we went to the AFC Championship game, we win one more game. That championship game is in Paycor Stadium, not in Kansas City. We go to back-to-back Super Bowls. Last year, it cost us a playoff spot. It's unacceptable. We can't start off 0-2, 0-3, 0-4. Can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, and again, I'm going back to Duke Tobin's interview. He talked about it. He talked about, made kind of the reference to Zach Taylor having to fix what is going on in the early part of the year, obviously referring to like you said, the country club off-season, but the training camp. So, I think it's a noticeable thing. I think that maybe some of those voices were getting stale. You know, the Frank Pollocks and the Lou Anarumos of the world, and that's why the Bengals have come in and gutting. I really think that this gutting of the coaching staff has a lot to do with not just the developmental part of coaching with the young players, but I think it's about energy, and I think it's about what these younger guys are going to bring to the practice field. There was definitely a staleness in the air in training camp, and you heard it from the media outlets too. So I do. I think the biggest thing about the injuries, Jennifer, is it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because you want to make sure your players are healthy for week one, but at the same time, like Mon said, we're 1-11 the last couple years in those 12 games, those first, couple games or whatever. So, you're not going to win Super Bowls going 1-11, the first 3 games of the year, I think it is. So that all has to do with preseason and playing these guys and being more physical.
So let me expound on that and get more thoughts on this, because there's not a lot they can do in the off season. There's not a lot more that they can do because of the collective bargaining agreement and what they're allowed to do in training camp and how they're allowed to tackle and they're not allowed to tackle, and OTAs for sure. So I guess my question is maybe Jake, you could take this. We saw a lot of bad pursuit angles. We saw bad tackling. Are there drills that they can do in training camp that don't necessarily include tackling, but get you in that position, getting a better angle and getting where you're there, doing everything up to without actually tackling? Is there something they can do there?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, listen, even at my level, we don't, once the hay's in the barn, so to speak, meaning, our training camp for us at the high school level, after training camp's over and we get started, we don't tackle a lot during season. We don't. But we work on the fundamentals and the mechanics of it. Again, a lot of it is about understanding your run fits on the defensive side of the ball. And, I think in the Bengals case this year, you had a lot of missed tackles. You had a lot of bad, like mechanical, fundamental football. We saw Geno Stone on many occasions taking bad angles. Jermaine Pratt, the same thing. That's coaching. That is coaching, watching film, being prepared for your opponent. Most of it comes from also the understanding of the defense. And I think you saw when Logan Wilson went down, it was a whole different look as far as guys fitting the run. I mean, when your quarterback on defense goes out, it's painful at times. So absolutely, all that stuff is coached. All of it is coached. There's an instinctive part of football where you just let guys play and run to the football and do those things. But, football is a team sport. You guys know that. It's the greatest team sport in the world. And it's about all 11 guys doing their job, not doing someone else's job, but doing their job. And that is all stuff that has to be coached. And a lot of those run fits comes from guys doing their job.
Go ahead,
Al Golden probably sat down and had 7-10 interviews with local media, and I forget which one it was. I think it was one of the local NBC affiliates. Maybe it's on YouTube. I did watch it. The question was asked, what are you going to do? The Bengals really struggled at tackling and used pursuit angles. He was really specific about it. He said it seemed like the Bengal defenders were just going for the ball and trying to strip it, and then the running back or the wide receiver would get 10 extra yards. So Al Golden did address that. He goes, it's something we're going to work on. Yards after the catch, missed tackles, those are hidden yards that kill you. Mm-hmm. And I did see that. Guys are trying to strip the ball this year. They're trying to do things cute, trying to get that turnover, which I appreciate. Well, guess what? You're giving the other team another 15, 20, 30 yards on a stat sheet that you can't recover from. Mm-hmm. So fundamentals are the key in training camp. If they go 10 live scrimmages a practice, make it 15 or 20. All right. If you give the guys 1 quarter in preseason, give them 2. Just think little things like that, I think, can make a difference.
Well, that's a good transition there, because that's a question from Eric in Florida. This Eric, is the answer playing the starters more in the preseason? Joe wanted that last year, didn't quite get it. Is that one of the ways to solve this, Mon? What do you think about that, or is it too risky for the grandmon?
What's it with I'm reading the comment from Jeff. He's already talking about the mustache.
It's good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll answer that later.
No, I'm sorry, Eric. Repeat what you were saying. Repeat your question.
So is really the only answer playing the starters more in preseason because they are handcuffed so much in training camp?
That, or you know what? Let's not get hung up on the game. Just play them more in practice. I mean, I respect the fact that you want to give Alex, you want to give Kappa or Volson or Karras a few snaps off. They don't need it. Let them go out there and get dirty and play. And they came out flat. Again, I want to reference the Lombardi. He talks about the Patriot game, how the Bengals came out and how they looked. He talked about that also. Guys, when national people are talking about it, it's a problem. And for Duke Tobin to talk about it in the Hobson and the other interview with Conway, it's on the radar at Paycor. It is on the radar, and it has to be addressed. If there's another slow start, I'm telling you, that leash is going to be short for Zach Taylor.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what the answer is as far as playing players in the preseason. We see a lot of teams that don't play their players throughout the preseason, and they do just fine. So I don't know if that's the answer, playing the players in preseason. I don't know if that's the case, but I know this, Eric, whatever they are doing, don't do it anymore. Just like Mon said, it's that easy. It's like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over with the same result. That's what we're getting. That's what we have gotten. And it has cost this team playoffs the last 2 years because of a slow start So whatever's they're doing is not working. And if that means play players more during the preseason, then do it. If that means coaching them better in training camp, then do that, because that's what I'm leaning more towards is the coaching during training camp.
Ramp up the intensity in training camp.
Yes.
More intense meetings, more intense practices, playing more in preseason, have more bring back the Oklahoma drill, whatever that was. Just
well, they can't bring that back.
Yeah, well, a variation of it. The Providence drill. I don't know. Just
Athens, Georgia drill. Let's go with Justin's call out there.
No DUIs, no DUIs.
Well, and to shout out, I mean, anybody that hasn't seen it yet, Ace and Zim did a good interview with Mike Daniels, and he brought up how they were kind of threatening to cut him. So he just said, F it, and turned it on, went full out on every practice to the point where the offense couldn't do anything. And it made that team, that Super Bowl team, it made the offensive line better because he was doing that. But you kind of got to get that intensity. You may not be able to go extra time, but yeah, you could have those players. Don't let them think that they have a guaranteed spot on the roster. They're competing for a job. So ramp it up, go out there, tell everybody, got this quote yesterday when we were talking about, how coaching up young flag footballers and our sons and stuff. And one guy's kid is the lock to make the baseball team, but he was grinding because he didn't think he was. And that's kind of, my advice to him is, you may be Joe Burrow out there, but every day you should work your butt off like you're going to get cut or you think you're going to get cut. Keep working like that, proving yourself, and that's going to get us there. So if I could tell one thing to Golden, threaten everybody or make everybody believe that they're on the verge of getting cut and get the best effort out of them, and that can get us there. We appreciate everybody coming in the chat, asking questions. We've got a few more in here, but we're coming up on an hour already. So I'm going to throw up one of the probably the hardest ones to answer right now, being we haven't seen how the season has played out here, or the off season has played out. But let's go to Nandan's question. What is your confidence level going into next year for this team? Pre-free agency, pre-draft, we know nothing right now other than these new coaches. So, Jake, why don't you go first?
I mean, listen, my confidence level is always going to be high when number 9 is taking snaps. It's just that's the way it is. I mean, he's the best player in the NFL. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. As long as number 9 is taking snaps, I'm always going to be confident in this football team. I mean, let's be realistic, guys. Joe Burrow willed this team to 9 wins. It was all Joe Burrow. I don't care what anyone says. Joe Burrow willed this team to 9 wins. He played against a poorly efficient defense. He did it even with terrible coaching. I mean, Joe Burrow, bad offensive line play, especially interior offensive line. Joe Burrow is the best player in the NFL. And as long as we have him, my confidence level will always be high. But I will say this. I think the question more so should be, what's my confidence in this team competing for a Super Bowl? And that is going to depend on what they add in free agency and the draft. I like what they've done with this coaching staff, but our roster right now, at least on, from the outside looking in, is not good enough to be at the level of the Eagles and the Chiefs. This team has got to fix its deficiencies. It's got to pay its players, and if all those things happen the right way, this team is a Super Bowl. There's no reason why this team should not be competing for a Super Bowl next year. It better. Zach Taylor is going to be out of a job. I can tell you that. Mon?
I agree with a lot of things that Jake said. I really do. I think we saw what Burrow, Chase, Higgins, if Higgins stays, Chase Brown. I'm not worried about the offense. I really think the Bengals are going to improve on defense. I really do. Like I said, the bar is low, but I think Al Golden's going to come in. I think he's going to get a little bit more from those young players. That defense is going to be better. My only concern, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, It's the mojo. It's the chemistry. If we have another Bates situation where a situation that just resonates to that locker room where Trey Hendrickson doesn't get signed, or there's a long drawn out process with T. Higgins, or they potentially tag him again, or if they trade him. You heard what Burrow said tonight on ESPN. That could rip the locker room apart. So that's what concerns me. It's the peripheral things, that chemistry in the locker room. Players talk. They have to believe in their management. And that's what I'm concerned about. Offense, we're always going to be relevant with Joe Burrow. Always. Jamar Chase is going to sign the biggest contract for any wide receiver. He's not going anywhere. It's Higgins. It's Hendrickson. It's Hilton. Those guys are extremely important in that locker room.
Yes.
We're going to see what management does, because they could literally undermine a lot of the good things. So the next 6 to 8 weeks is huge.
Follow up, because I know you love talking this. What are your confidence that they get it right in free agency? Because get it right in free agency, then you can draft the best players. So confidence in the Bengals free agency strategy. We've seen them sign. They've taken a lot of swings. They paid Sheldon Rankins a good amount of money last year. They signed Trey. They went after Trey Waynes. They went out. They've taken swings. They haven't hit it out of the park most of the time. But confidence level in their strategy, and will they get it right? Mon, go first.
If I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I got about a 5 right now. They have to. We have some of the best players in the NFL. We know who they are. We talk about them all the time. But we have 2 or 3 of the worst rated players at certain positions, and they have got to get better there. They've got to spend money. I just don't want a guy. I don't want a guy that they fill in at that spot. I want a player, a real player.
They literally signed Lawrence Guy last year.
Yeah, I know. But, we got a super chat here, and they bring up the classic situation. That stat right there, if you want to bring it up, I mean.
Yeah, thanks for the super chat, Fuzzy Balls.
Yeah,
Cincy is 3-7 without T the last 2 seasons, and 15-9 with T.
Jamar Chase is a better player with T. Higgins. So is Joe Burrow. So is the Cincinnati Bengals. He's a must sign.
Yeah, and Subway Cookies earlier asked a question about the T. Higgins thing
I'm
too.
hungry.
Subway Cookies. So Subway Cookies, I'm gonna intertwine your question with this super chat. There's his question. By the way, thank you, Fuzzy Balls. I get it now. You are a tennis fan. I get it now.
Wait. So we'll talk about that off air. What were you thinking?
So mixing Subway Cookies and Fuzzy Balls together here.
Got a carbo load. I can make some cookies, by the way.
I am more, and this is good though. This is a good point. Is that I am a little concerned about who they're going to bring in for sure when it comes to free agency. I'm more concerned, Eric, that they cut the right players and they re-sign the right players. To me, that is bigger than what they do outside of this organization in free agency. Now, again, don't get me wrong. This team, there is a lot of things that this team needs to do and get better at when it comes to positional value, especially in the interior offensive line. But I want to see this team cut players that need to be cut to free up money, to re-sign our guys that Mon talked about, Trey, T, Jamar, and I'm going to say Mike Hilton is a part of that group. I think Mike Hilton is a big priority for this team, or should be. I want to see those guys get re-signed, and I want to see the right guys get cut. And if that happens, I think they're going to be forced to go out. The Alex Kappas of the world might not be in stripes next year. The Bengals are going to force themselves to go out and make good additions in free agency.
Sounds good to me. So questions pop into my head, just the structure of how it works. These all the cuts that we're all expecting and we're kind of hoping. We were worried that the Bengals weren't going to move on from Lou. They weren't going to move on from Frank Pollock, and they did that right away. So that kind of brought some optimism up for the three of us. Cut-wise, when do you guys think that stuff's going to happen, or is that not going to happen until into free agency? Are we going to wait to cut Sheldon Rankins until we sign his replacement, or is that stuff going to start dropping soon?
No, Eric.
Oh, we lost him on.
Yeah, I think we lost you on for a minute there. Eric, absolutely no way. Sheldon Rankins will be cut before we sign somebody to replace him. Sheldon Rankins he's gone. I'm going to tell you that right now. He is gone. I'm going to tell you another one that I think is going to be gone right away. And I hate to say this because I have his jersey and I have his bobblehead. I love him, but I think Sam Hubbard is gone before they find his replacement. I think the Hubbards and the Rankings and some of these other guys, listen, again, if you read the tea leaves in Duke Tobin's interview, he talks about, he doesn't say by name, but he is talking about the Sheldon Rankings, the Sam Hubbards, these guys that are getting paid over $10 million a year and are not producing. He mentions that in the interview, just not by name. So I think those guys are going to get cut before they find their replacements.
So You're saying as soon as possible. I guess I'll go to Mon because I'm sure he knows. When is the earliest point possible that they can cut those guys? Oh, and he buffered.
Can you guys see me? I'm having internet issues here.
I got you.
Can you
got you now.
Am I back?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the roster bonuses are going to be effective the first week in March. So those cuts are going to happen before the first week in March.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the names you mentioned, I think they're going to be gone. I really do.
Yeah. BJ Hill could be another one. He talked about, which I thought was very interesting. Again, not by name, but he mentioned 3 starters on the defensive line that started in the Super Bowl for us, played this year for us, started on the defensive line again, and he talked about keeping those guys too long. Listen, we all know he's not talking about Trey Hendrickson. He's talking about Sam Hubbard and BJ Hill. That is who he is talking about. Going to be very, very interesting offseason.
Jake, Rankins, Hill, and Hubbard. Hill's not under contract anymore. He's a free agent.
Oh, he's a free agent,
that's
right.
$30 million in salary last year on that defensive line.
Yeah.
Could you imagine allocating that $30 million and getting a mega impact player on defense? That would be something.
Be something. No, you're right. I forgot about BJ Hill. He's a free agent. He won't. I don't think he'll be coming back. But you're going to see guys getting cut left and right. Listen, this team. After listening to that again, he might just be saying those things because that's what we want to hear. But I don't think so. When your GM comes out and says this roster is going to look a lot different, it's going to look a lot different. I really do believe that, and I think it's going to be the guys, right, that Mon doesn't want to see that we've been bringing in. Those guys are going to get cut. They're going to be gone. Geno Stone could be cut. I mean, I know that Duke Tobin talked about that, Geno Stone played better at the end. I can't remember the whole thing he said, but he talked a little bit about Geno Stone and he played a little bit better there. But Geno Stones of the world, the Zach Mosses of the world, the Sheldon Rankings of the world, Alex Kappa, Sam Hubbard, maybe even Jermaine Pratt. Those guys are not going to be in stripes next year. I think as Bengal fans, we need to be prepared. Yes, Jennifer, Von Bell. Wait, Von Bell's on a 1-year deal or is he on a 2-year deal?
I'm not sure. I think it was a 2-year deal because he was on a 3-year with Carolina, and they're still paying most of his salary. So
I can't remember.
I'll have to look into that.
But my point is that we as Bengal fans, we need to be prepared for this offseason because I think we are going to be in shock when some of these guys keep getting cut and cut and cut and cut. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, typical offseason, we don't have as much to talk about. So we went to doing one show last year, but now this year, new coaches, a lot of cuts coming up, impending biggest free agent signing period ever. It's going to be crazy. Hopefully, the Bengals time everything where they make their moves on Tuesdays and Thursdays when the Bengals Pulse is coming to you live, so that we can break all that news for you and keep the content rolling. What do you got, Jake?
I was going to say, before we get out of here, I know we got to get out of here, but David Gabbard had a question about, do we draft a safety? And I know I was just talking about Geno and Von Bell and those guys. Mon, what are your thoughts on this? Because I think they're going to get a free agent. I don't think they're going to draft a replacement. I think they're going to go out, and I think they are going to get a free agent dude. What do you think, Mon?
Yeah, I would love to see that. I think Jay Morrison mentioned the free agency. Jay Morrison mentioned Holland from Javon Holland from Miami would be one of the highest rated safeties in free agency. And that would be something. Malachi Starks, if he drops from Georgia, the number 17, which I don't think he will, the Bengals should run to the podium and draft him immediately. He's a top 10 pick. Guys, safety is a big need. It really is. And I know we talk about it all the time, but Von Bell and Geno Stone are not the answer. Jalen Battle, Jordan Battle has a lot of talent, and I think he has a role with the Bengals, but we need some significant athleticism back there. I would not be surprised if they spend big money in free agency or a high draft pick on safety.
Agreed. I agree. I think it's going to be very interesting, that position too, because again, Duke Tobin specifically talked about that position. It makes me feel that the Bengals are going to go out and make a splash in free agency and go get a dude. Again, I think the Bengals realize what Mon has been saying, that, the Nick Scotts of the world are not going to win you a Super Bowl. And I think the Bengals are going to go out and really find a dude to help with Jesse Bates. I know Nick Scott played in the Super Bowl for the Rams, but that was because of injury. That wasn't because of anything else. There was an injury. He played.
Yeah, he definitely did not win the Super Bowl for the Rams, but he does have a ring, and we don't have a ring, and we're not going to go into that.
He didn't start the whole season. But one more question, Eric. Let's do one more question. Do we have any more questions out there?
Let's see. Other than Monstash drafting the safety, I mean, I guess we can go with this one. Who was the bonehead that wanted to draft Jackson Carman? And not just draft Jackson Carman, but overdraft Jackson Carman. We could have got him 2 rounds later.
Well, that was Frank Pollock, right? The glass eater. That was the glass eater, wasn't it? That was.
No, I think it was. It might have been Paul Alexander. I thought he said he coached him up and worked with him in the off season, and I think maybe the Bengals front office listened to him. And also, wasn't he?
What was the O-line coach, Mom, before Frank Pollock?
It was Turner, but Turner.
Oh yes.
I don't think drafted him. No, was it?
I don't know.
I think his Ohio State ties. The Bengals love him. It was guys. I don't know.
I mean, it was another. Again, when we look at this offensive line and this defensive line, we talked about it. This team is so bad at drafting those positions, or at least developing those positions. I'm not sure who is the one that drafted Jackson Carman.
Paul Alexander talked him up. He coached him. He trained him before the draft. And the Bengals listened to their old offensive line coach.
Paul. That was not a good call there, Paul.
And the problem is we drafted him in the 2nd, and we could have got him in the 4th.
And that kind of threw that whole draft off too, didn't it? Just kind of threw that whole draft off. Such a bad pick in such an important position, and where it was on the draft board. Just another one of those Cedric Ogbuehi picks that, man, oh man, it's really hurt this football team. Again, Mon still trying to replace Andrew Whitworth, right? We're always trying to replace guys that we get rid of. It takes years to do that. That's why you can't let T. Higgins leave. Do not let him leave. All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. As always, guys, if you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. As always, guys, if you like this podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. Guys, follow Mon on Twitter at the Fire Mon or at the Grand Mon. I'm going to have to be your Twitter handle. Follow me on Twitter at Coach.
He's not listening.
Follow Eric on Twitter at eFlash2Hs88. That's with 2 H's. Follow Cincinnati Podcast Network on Twitter at Cincinnati Pod. And as always, guys, follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse sign. The same on Instagram without the at Bengals_Pulse sign. As always, guys, check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Cincinnati Podcast Network. He is Mon. He is Eric. I am Jake. He is the Grand Mon.
Listen, somebody needs to create a parody account of Mon. We'll just call it. Actually, this is your burner account. Let's make a burner account where you can go and lose. You can fight battles with yourself, and then the Firemon wins the battle, and your Twitter record goes up and up and up. That's how you game the system.
Jeff, we will.
You guys are killing me. I'm glad the internet's going out of my house.
Listen, Jeff. Wait, we got Jeff. Jeff, we promise you. I promise you, Jeff. The next episode, we will discuss Mon's mustache. Jeff really wants us to talk about to discuss the mustache, the stash. What is the likelihood we see it again? Jeff, you'll just have to wait till next episode. You're just gonna have to wait. It's gonna be we're leaving you on a cliffhanger here with Mon's stash.
It's coming back.
The stash will return September 2025, and he will get revenge. Dun, dun, dun.
All right, he is Mon, he is Eric. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We love you all. We appreciate you, and we're going to see you next week. Hoo day, Bengal fans.